Hello everyone, in this video I would like to talk about how to calculate variance and standard deviation. So before I talk about variance and standard deviation, let me just explain the difference between the population sample because we use different notation for population and samples. So population is, as everyone knows, is just the scores of everyone in the whole wide world. So let's say if you want to study the intelligence scores of school children, then you will have to study all the school children in the whole world, which is not really possible unless you're doing a census. So that's why in psychology, we just recruit a sample, so which is a representative group of your population. So you might want to study maybe preschool or school kids in your country, like maybe let's say around 500 school kids, and you measure their intelligence. So that's a sample. And so in population and sample, we have we use the Greek Greek notation. So this one mu is called the mean, and x is still this x, so it's each individual score. And the n is number of observations or number of people that you're studying. And so if we see this sigma square, so that's the variance. So variance is calculated as this. This formula seems like a bit complicated for you, then I'll explain how we get this variance. So variance is basically a measure of how varies your data is away from the mean. So in here, so this is your mean, right? So it's basically just measuring how varies your data is away from the mean. So in order to measure that, we have to know how much each score are far away from the mean. So that's what we do. So we will have to start finding the deviation score first. So that's the deviation score of each. We'll have to calculate all the deviation score of each of the score in the distribution, and then we square them, and then we divide it by n. So if that is confusing for you, let's try calculating using this example. So these are the hours of sleep per night. So some people sleep 4 hours, some people sleep 5 hours, and so on until 8 hours. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have n is equal to 8. So 8 people sleep in hours at night. Yeah. So in order to find the variance, so how vary the scores are from the mean, so we'll first have to calculate the deviation score from the mean. Note that we'll have to use this formula to calculate the variance, but this is confusing, right? So I'll just do it one step by step. So first we write down all the numbers, all the 8 numbers down, and then we first find the deviation score. So the deviation score is how a score deviates from the mean. So if you are sleeping 4 hours, then it's like how much 4 hours varies from the mean, so deviate from the mean. So that's what we're trying to find. So 4 minus, we don't know the mean, right? So let's find the mean first. So if you know how to find the mean, it's very easy. It's just the sum of all the numbers divided by the number of observation. So we have n is equal to 8. And let's just add all of these out. Is equal to 48. So 48 divided by 8 is 6. So that means that your mean is 6. So this is how the score deviates from the mean. So minus 2. And then so 5 minus 6 is going to be negative 1. And then we just calculate all the deviation. I have calculated all the deviation score away from the mean, and if I add all of these numbers up, I'll get 0. That's the reason why we cannot just simply use this number to calculate the variance. We have to square them to make the 0 disappear to calculate the variance. I just square all the variance, all the deviation scores, and I would just have to add them up in order to get this numerator. I got the sum of square deviation score as 12, and then I just substitute 12 and then substitute 8 in the formula, and then I get 1.5 as my variance for the sample. So we can see that the scores are varying around at the point of 1.5. And how to calculate standard deviation is very easy, because standard deviation is the square root of variance. The reason why we have to calculate standard deviation is because variance is in square units. So for example, in psychology, what does depression squares mean? It doesn't make sense, right? So we have to return it back into the original units. That's why we have to calculate standard deviation back again. So square root of standard deviation, variance is standard deviation, so it's 1.5. Square root is equal to 1.2247. So this is like the original unit of the distribution, and we can say that at one standard deviation, the scores deviate from the mean at 1.22. So that's all for how to calculate the variance in standard deviations. Hope you enjoy it and understand how to do stats. Bye bye.